We're going to salute the colors with a pledge of allegiance to America and then to the Conch Republic pledge. Attention on deck. Words and images we hold most dear, that when the winds again blow and the seas again rise, we will be prepared in body, mind, and spirit.
Okay, good evening, Jim Williams. That was from Key West. That's the annual burning of the Hurricanes flag for the end of the hurricane season, and letting everybody know the season is over officially on the calendar, that is. But we do have a system out in the East Atlantic, and some models are hinting at something down near the Central America, down near Nicaragua, somewhere that might develop. Anyways, I'm going to be with you along with my co-host Bill Phillips. He'll be with us shortly, but I'm going to be with you for about 3 hours tonight. I've got a lot of stuff to go over. Crazy hurricane season. We've had 30 named storms, maybe 31. We've had more landfalls. I'll show you the graphic on that in a minute. More landfalls as far as areas impacted in the entire Atlantic Basin than any time in history. I've gone and researched that. I'm going to show you the models tonight. I'm going to show you how the NHC performed versus the models on each storm. And I've got video from my intercepts this year. Bill Phillips and I were co-hosting, and everything was worked out pretty well. We had good video, got a lot of really interesting video. And, you know, when we do these videos, we try really hard to give people the best information as a hurricane is hitting land. Let's see. Been doing this since '98. I don't know how many storms I've covered, probably 50, 60 of them, and probably a dozen of them in person, or at least being there or being impacted by it or something like that. But this year we've had to cover everything. We covered 6 storms this year. One of them was, I was not there. That was Hurricane Laura in western Louisiana. All the other storms, well, Iota as well. I was not there for that one, or Zeta. Well, I was there for Zeta in the Florida Keys as a tropical storm, but, you know, generally the hurricanes I cover, and I was in Delta, Sally, did not get there for Zeta, but we did cover Zeta. So it's about 50% of the storms that we covered at Hurricane City this year, I was actually there, and the rest were done in-house. Now, we have a whole problem with copyright issues, people getting pissed off about have their video used or graphics used. In fact, I had a video queued up for tonight from my predictions video, because my predictions were outstanding this year again. And I had a video of me explaining my #1 pick, how it was affected 4 times this year. And I had the video of Barack Obama shooting the 3-pointer and saying, "That's what I do." And as soon as I practiced, I just put that up to see how it came across on the video before we went live tonight, and somebody flagged it as a copyright. So this is what we're up against. It's crazy. But anyway, it's a little after 7 p.m. Just waiting for some people to hop on here. And again, well, I'll be with you for 3 hours tonight. And then during the off season, if anything pops up tropically, of course, I'll cover it. But it's going to probably be until next hurricane season. I mean, you know, Bill's up in Virginia Beach, so he might get some nor'easter or something up there he can cover with his remote camera. We both have our own remote cameras that we like to set up and film. So, you know, he'll set that up if something happens up north, but I'll be kind of dormant. What I'll be doing is from now until May, going into May, is getting the database updated, getting the rankings updated. You got to realize 87% of the cities in the database out of the 140 were impacted by a named storm this year. So I have to update the graphics and the text on all those pages. So I'm going to be busy doing that. And then I got to get the rankings in order and what to tell you what areas get hit more than others, and so on and so such. So I mean, I'm monitoring my phone, and I just see what people are hearing and seeing and everything. But anyway, that's going to keep me busy during the off season. Of course, I may help Bill do some coverage if there's a big nor'easter or something that's hitting up his way, but we're going to probably be pretty much dormant until May, and then I'll release my predictions and start the ball rolling all over again. So let me go ahead and bring in Bill.
We're good,
and we're there split screen now. Bill, welcome.
Good evening. Good start to the show. Let's do this. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we've got a lot of images to show tonight. Bill's up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I'm in Delray Beach, Florida. We co-host all the shows together. Bill, when I hit the road, it's great having Bill stream the shows, and I want to thank you again for what you do, because when I'm on the road, I can't monitor the broadcast. I can't put other graphics up on the screen. Like, I do the best I can with the live shot out the window and then aiming at the iPad every now and then. But Bill's been helping me with this for a long time, and there's sometimes graphics and the way he presents either the remote cameras or my shot is huge, because I simply can't do that from the road. So he puts it together, sometimes split screen, sometimes the cameras only on that are remote, sometimes only my camera, sometimes he'll show radar, satellite, things that I can't do from the road. So I really appreciate it, and I know Bill's got other projects going on, so he takes a little time off to do this and help me. So I do appreciate that. And
not a problem.
So anyway, let's get on with it, because we got a lot of images to show tonight. But quickly, before we get to the images, I just want to pick your brain a little bit. What do you think? Give me like a paragraph to describe this hurricane season in your mind. Give me a few sentences on what you think overall about this season.
I can sum it up in one sentence, and this is just from a personal perspective, because the Gulf Coast, or the northern Gulf Coast, was affected seven times. So I never got a break, because I was dealing with family with each storm. So I'm exhausted. I'm done. I'm washed up.
All right.
I'm done.
Yeah, that was a lot of.
I'm done for 2020.
Right. Well, with that said, I bet you there's a lot of hurricane fanatics out there they would have been asking for more. Like, give me 5 more. Give me 10 more. I guarantee you a lot of these guys.
We needed, selfishly, I wanted 1 more, because we're always working on things technically, so you always need more.
Yeah, and we're trying out this new program tonight, by the way, and it's you see the graphics in the background, the split screen, we got the logo. There's a lot of other things I'm going to show you tonight with this program, but this would have been nice to try in the storm. We did use it a little bit in Ada, but it was the mobile version, not the PC version of it. So, but here's my opinion of this hurricane season. I look at it in twofold. I look at it as the double impact season. In other words, a lot of the same areas were hit over and over and over again. Like, it was one of those years like you were either outside the bubble or you were in it deep.
Oh yeah,
right?
You were either swimming in, you were either not in it, or you were drowning.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and the storms were not really large this year either. They were kind of compact. So if you weren't in that core, like if you didn't get that core of tropical storm force sustained winds over you, you might have just gotten the glancing blow show that we like to talk about, or maybe a few inches of rain, but not anything major, some minor tree limbs coming down and whatnot. But if you were in the core of these things, you pretty much got your ass kicked. I mean, Cancun, Mexico.
And I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but I'm not going to name her, but I had a family member learn the lesson between a brush and a hit, and it's a hell of a lesson.
Huge difference.
She learned, and she said she'll never be there again, and I believe her. She's not going to put up, she don't want to do it. There's a hell of a difference between when you take it straight up the gut versus something 50 or 100 miles away, depending on the size.
Exactly. And and a lot of people, they can't get gun shy about this because, like your aunt, she lives in an area where they have a rich hurricane history. So she's going to get hit again and again. This isn't just a one-time. I mean, it might not be next year. It might be 3 years down the road. And by the way, speaking of which, I wanted to mention this too in my opening comments about the weather, is the fact that 2005 we had a season similar to this, and then 2006 it was like crickets. We had no landfalling hurricanes in the United States the year after that 2005 blockbuster hurricane. I'm going to show you some graphics on that, but it's not. I don't want people to think like, oh my God, it's done. Like we're going to get bombarded from here on out, and it's going to be like this every year. This year was kind of an anomaly.
But, and here's that stat that I teased you with on the phone that I didn't want to give you. 18 of the last 26 hurricane seasons have been statistically above average. Since I was 12 years old and I'm now 38, we've had 63% of the hurricane seasons be above average.
Wow. Yeah, I no doubt it's getting more active. There's no question. I just don't know if because I thought this, and you and I talked about this. I thought this after 2005, like, oh my God, every season's going to be like this now. We're going to have Cat 5s coming toward the U.S. We're going to have, and we had no Cat 5s hit the U.S. or anywhere this year. Close, but not. It didn't happen. We had no Cat 5s hit, unlike the last 4 years. I think we had. Well, no. Well, I don't want to.
No, we've had going back to 2015. We've had at least one Category 5 each of the last 5 years. That's not normal. That's indicative. I think it's going to become the norm, but it's not there yet. That's a new trend that's scary. That we're seeing these repeated storms that are monsters over and over and over again. It's just, we're going to get them. It's a question of where they go.
Right. Yeah, and the difference can be so close between getting a Cat 5 and not getting a Cat 5. I mean, look at South Florida last year with Dorian, 185 mile per hour wind sitting right off the coast of Florida, and then it hung a sharp right-hand turn. I mean, that was the difference of 100 miles between us getting absolutely annihilated and getting missed altogether.
I mean, it was 100 miles due east of your house, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was 100. Well, I think it was 110 to be exact. But I mean, the difference is phenomenal. What could have happened if it would have just jogged a little further west? And then look at Nicaragua. They got that Cat 4 down there, 155. But it was just. I know it's splitting hairs 5 miles an hour. But I mean, the difference. It was almost a Cat 5 when it hit there, and they had two of them hit the same place of, almost the same magnitude. So
15 miles apart. I don't think you could. I don't think a professional dart player could hit the same spot on the dart.
Good point.
That beat that precise. That's basically, you're telling a professional dart player to hit these two arrows in the same spot and you get no do-overs. That was basically two darts in the same spot.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely, and they were almost the same size too. Like they were the same shape, the same size. They were just, one was just a little more south than the other one. I mean, absolutely incredible. But anyway, let's get on with the graphics. Let me start out with this one. This is the shot of my season predictions that I made back in May. This is from May 15th, and I'm not going to illustrate this, but the number one. Wait a minute. That's not the right. Forget that. Where did that even come from? That's not even. That's not even this year's predictions. What am I doing here? I got it queued up anyway in the screen share. So let's get on with that. Let's start with this one. And I do have that image. So let's go on with this. Let me go full screen on this.
Clean it up.
Now this is from my Hurricane City database, the 140 locations that I calculate each hurricane season. I keep track of the 140 locations, all through, including the Caribbean, the United States, and the Canadian Maritimes, and of course Bermuda and the Azores and Cape Verde Islands out there near Africa. So you add up all the cities and use the range rings that I use with the HurtTrack program. What it does is it tells you where the tropical storm force winds are 40 miles per hour and up. And this year, notice the bar graph on the right, 117 out of the 140 cities got impacted by 40 mile per hour winds this year, a named storm in other words. Compare that to these past years. 2005, 76 out of the 140 were impacted. Now, there's a reason for that, and we'll show you the map on that in just a minute. But 2005, a lot of those hurricanes, there was like half of them that were like packed in the Gulf of Mexico, and then you had the other half that didn't hit any land at all. So that's different than this year. The majority of the ones this year impacted land. There wasn't that many fish storms this year. So that's the difference between this year and 2005. In 1985, the reason I added that in the list is 1985, we had a whole bunch of them hit the United States, but nothing for the Caribbean. It was uncanny. Like everything was the United States, very little in the Caribbean. 1979, there was more of a spread, but it just, even though it was an active season and the East Coast got impacted a lot, still only 62 out of the 140 cities were impacted. 1960, we had a lot of large storms in 1960, these big, massive like Donna, where it just Donna came into the southern peninsula, sliced across Florida and went right up the eastern seaboard. So that was a large wind field that impacted every single city up and down the eastern seaboard. So you had systems like that made it like comes in second place. 1960 is in second place. And then we have 1933, which is the year that we had, if you look at a tracking map, it just blows your mind how many named storms there were that year. And they were spread all over the place, but mainly the Caribbean and the United States. There wasn't that much in the northern areas like the Canadian Maritimes, Bermuda, places like that. But the eastern seaboard got hammered, and the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. So that's third place, 1933.
Virginia Beach, because that's the one storm that came in from the east.
Right, that's right. That was the year that happened. Yep.
That's right. That's why I interrupted you, because that is so hard to do meteorologically. We plan for that, but it's like we can't ever get it. But it can happen. Fluke tracks can happen. I mean, look at Sandy in 2012. We've never seen that. We thought that was going to go out to sea, and it took a hard left and come right in.
Right.
So fluke things can happen. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
Yeah. No problem. All right. So it's a good point. So here is the 2005 to 2020 comparison. So let me illustrate this a little bit, kind of give you what my ideas on what's going on here. So we have this massive storms that are, just getting my ink lined up here. All right, so look at this. We have 2020. We have this big mass right here, Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean Sea, and then there's kind of a straggle out here, in the Atlantic. A lot of fish storms out in here. I'm sorry. I'm pointing at 2020. That's this year. We had the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and then. But here's what happened. You had a few of them impact Bermuda out here. You had the Canadian Maritimes impacted a little bit. We still might get one more out here over here near the Azores or something. We'll see what that other one does. But then you compare that to 2000. Pardon?
I said that's another discussion later. The new intertropical convergence zone in the North Atlantic. Go on. And that's just another discussion later. All the fish storms that I don't think we would have caught 20 years ago up towards the Azores, and we've got a system right now near the Canary Islands. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Come on.
Well, I mean, this graphic I'm showing right now is more in reference to landfalls. So, I mean, it's just amazing, though. If you look at the top image there and you look at the bottom, the tracks are very similar in the Gulf of Mexico. I mean, they were hitting the Yucatan and then heading north towards the northern Gulf. And then you look out here, and the difference in 2005 is a lot of them didn't hit Bermuda, and they didn't hit the Eastern Caribbean. And, you know, we got some up in here, a couple of, you know, tropical storms, you know, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference, in other words. The Southern Caribbean was basically untouched this year. But the seasons are very similar. That's all I'm saying. Is, I mean, if you look at these two maps, they're very similar. Of course, I drew all over everything, so it's
Right. Next image.
okay. So, whoops, I accidentally. Okay, let me get that back, and then I accidentally X'd out of it.
Oops.
Okay, there it is. And bring it back. There we go. Okay, so let me get to the next image here. Okay, here's my predictions. That's what I wanted to show you. Yeah.
And we
so,
promise that's the correct one.
Right. In fact, I can zoom in on this a little bit so people can
Blow
see
up
it
a
better.
little bit. It's small.
All right, so there we go. Yeah, it's good enough. All right, so notice the top. Cancun, Mexico is my #1 pick. Tropical Storm Cristobal, Tropical Storm Gamma, Delta hit as a hurricane, and Zeta brushed as a hurricane. And I always tell everybody every year, if you're in my top 5, batten down the hatches because you're going to have a rough hurricane season. Now, people are going to say, you just got lucky because there was 30 named storms. How could you miss? It's like throwing darts at a board. But I will say this. My #1 pick got more impacts than anywhere else in the Atlantic Basin. That includes Western Louisiana. Because I think they got 3 over there.
That goes to show you that the areas you choose, there's a method to it. They got it 4 times? I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, and it's based on named storms with 40-mile-per-hour winds, not hurricanes only, because everything would be completely different. It was just hurricanes only. There's a pattern to the Atlantic Basin, and it has to include tropical storms in order to figure the pattern out, because you can't just base everything on 75 miles an hour and up. You got to start at 40 miles per hour and up, which is an organized system, organized enough to be named a tropical storm with 40-mile-per-hour winds. And this way, you take all hurricanes and tropical storms and calculate it. You can figure out, micromanage the Atlantic Basin and kind of figure out who's at risk on any given year, what areas get hit the most, whether it's a busy or a slow season, all those things. So by using both of them, it really narrows it down, and it's all mathematical. My predictions, very little of it has to do with environmental variables, although I do use the North Atlantic Oscillation in my predictions, and I've added that the past few years. It's really helped to narrow it down a lot, and it's done a really good job. In fact, I think when Cancun, Mexico is in a negative, when there's a negative North Atlantic Oscillation going into the hurricane season, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a North Atlantic Oscillation at the height of the hurricane season. It's just what the math tells you at the beginning of the hurricane season. If they're expecting or predicting a negative NAO, this is what I'm predicting. And Cancun, Mexico, whenever they get hit, there's a negative NAO. So whenever they get hit, that's why they were high on the list this year, and that helped narrow it down. But notice the Cayman Islands, I was really worried about them this year. They did get Tropical Storm Laura and Tropical Storm Ada pass through there. Manzanillo, Cuba, which is in eastern Cuba, was hit by Tropical Storm Laura. St. Pierre, Newfoundland, was hit by Extratropical Storm Teddy. And Brownsville, the only area I picked for the United States this year, was hit by Hurricane Hannah. That was the first hurricane to impact the United States this year. and that was my only area in the United States I predicted to be impacted by a hurricane. So they got hit by Hannah and Brownsville. Well, they actually got brushed by Hannah, but it
You
still
want-
counts because the tropical storm force wind did impact them.
You
What
meant
was that?
You meant Texas when you said Brownsville. The only area that you were talking about in Texas was Brownsville.
Right. Well, no, for the United States as a whole. The only area in my top 5 is in the United States is Brownsville.
Oh, it is Brownsville. Okay. My fault.
Now the moderate, top off the top 20. Do you have a speaker on or something? Because I'm hearing an echo all of a sudden. No?
No, but I will turn it down a little bit.
Just a little bit, because I'm hearing it.
That may be the problem.
All right. Ocean City was number 6, hit by Tropical Storm Faye, Extratropical Storm Zeta. Miami, I thought Miami wasn't going to get hit this year. I was really expecting Miami was going to get away this year. That's why I didn't really have it in my top 5. They were brushed by Tropical Storm Eta. Grand Isle, Louisiana was hit by Tropical Storm Cristobal and Hurricane Zeta. Galveston was another Texas area. I was really worried about Texas this year for the United States. They were impacted by Tropical Storm Beta and Delta. Both Hurricane Delta brushed Galveston. ABC Islands were not affected. Those are down near South America. Morehead City, North Carolina, hit by Hurricane Isaias, and it was a backdoor brush, Isaias. Norfolk, your area, Bill, was impacted by Tropical Storm Isaias. Cabo Corrientes, Cuba, Tropical Storm Laura. Oviedo, Dominican Republic, which is on the Barahona Peninsula, the southern tip of the Dominican Republic, Tropical Storm Laura. Barbados, not impacted. I was really surprised at that. Dauphin Island, Alabama, Tropical Storm Cristobal, Sally, and Zeta brushed the area. So the big year for Dauphin Island, Alabama. Kingston, Jamaica was number 17 on my list. They didn't get impacted at all. Very quiet in Jamaica this year. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, brushed by Hurricane Isaias. New York, Tropical Storm Faye and backdoor Tropical Storm Isaias. So they got 2 impacts this year. You wouldn't have known it, but New York was impacted. And Tropical Storm Eta impacted Tampa, giving the area some flooding and some tropical storm force winds. So overall, this is the most cities that have ever been impacted in my predictions, even more than 2005. And again, I always say there's going to be areas that are hit that I don't predict, and that was Western Louisiana. Cameron is in my database, and Intracoastal Cities in my database. I did not have them getting impacted this year. They were nailed. They were obliterated almost this year by tropical systems. I did not really have Alabama in my sights this year, although I did have, as I pointed out here, I did have Dauphin Island, Alabama in my top 20.
Close enough.
Didn't have Eastern Louisiana at all. Didn't think New Orleans would be impacted. Let's see, anything I'm leaving out? Yeah, I mean, I just really didn't have the Northern Gulf, at least the Northwestern Gulf, at high risk. I'd had Texas and I had the Western Caribbean really at high risk this year. You know, surprisingly, Bill, is the Bahamas. Now, you would think, let me ask you this question. Do you think the Bahamas were impacted this year?
I would say no. On the grand scheme of it, am I missing something? I mean, could they have gotten some rain from a tropical storm or something as it's passing by, maybe, but nothing huge?
Here's the thing. They really didn't get any direct, they got impacted by a few storms. In fact, I'm going to surprise you here. The entire Bahama Island chain got either brushed or hit this year. But you would have never known it because all the attention was in the Caribbean. I mean, in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. But every island in the Bahamas was impacted this year by 40-mile-per-hour winds. And the reason for that was Zeta, Isaias, and there's another one. Oh, there was a couple of like these ones. The one that was brushing Bermuda and hitting Bermuda. I'll get to those a little later.
Yeah.
Was it Franklin? Not Franklin. There's another name on the list. The one that was it Wilson or something? I don't know. There's a couple that went up there near Bermuda that did impact the Bahamas, the eastern Bahamas. So they all got impacted. All those islands got impacted this year, although you wouldn't have believed it. And the Greater Antilles too.
Hit severely because there were a couple of islands that recovering from a Dorian that just didn't need anything else.
Yeah, not to say that the Bahamas were hit hard this year. No, compared to last year, nothing. I mean, they got 40 mile. I think the highest area got like 60 mile an hour gust or something. I mean, a far cry from last year.
I mean, that's you have thunderstorms worse than that. So I mean,
right.
You got lucky.
All right, so let's get on with more images here.
Before we get too much further, I'm going to toot your horn on the predictions, and I'm going to take a belt swipe at some professionals. Jim releases these predictions once a year in May. That's it. He doesn't update these during the hurricane season. He releases them once, and that's it. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Right. Yeah, I don't adjust it. Like Phil Klotzbach, I know you didn't want to name names, but he takes, he comes out in May with a prediction. Then he comes out in June with a prediction. Then he comes out in August. And then I think he does one in September now or something. I mean, it's kind of like knowing the score of the football game after halftime, and saying, okay, I think I'm going to make the over-under a little higher now because, I know that the score is going to be a lot higher after halftime. It's kind of cheating in a way, but I guess he does it to keep things up to date so it doesn't make, your predictions look that bad. But let's face it. I'm glad you brought that up too, by the way, because nobody, I don't care who tells you, nobody predicted 30 named storms this year. None of the predictive agencies that I saw predicted 30 named storms. I predicted 18 to 20. That was my range from May. And this was before we were expecting a blockbuster season. So I was on the path to thinking it was going to be really active, but I severely underestimated. I was off by 10 storms. I think Phil Klotzbach ended up being off by 6 or 7. Noah was off like by 10 or 7 or I don't know. I think they set up to 24 named storms originally, something like that. So, I mean, everybody was way off. So nobody can tell you how many named storms before the season started. Everybody had a terrible year. But I was right on the predictions of where they were going to go, except for the Western Louisiana thing. The Louisiana thing escaped me this year.
Yeah.
All right, so just speaking of which now, this is the map that I make that shows who generally gets hit when there's active seasons. So let's take a look at this. And if you color code it, here we go. We have Western Louisiana. Look at that. They're in the dark maroon colors. They get hit when there's generally 18 or more named storms. So look at the Northwest Yucatan here. Again, they get hit when there's really, really hyperactive hurricane seasons. South Texas, look at that. They were hit by Hannah. They get hit when there's really active hurricane seasons. So now you might say, okay, well, there's some others that didn't get hit, like up here in Northeast Florida. They get hit in really active hurricane seasons. But they did get a backdoor system, I think, this year. They got Ada. And I think they were brushed maybe by one of the Zeta, Delta, one of those storms that were crossing and heading your way up there in Virginia Beach. Somebody up there might have got hit in North Florida. I know they were impacted definitely by Zeta. So, but that's just proof that if you pay attention to these graphics, and I put these up occasionally on Twitter, I post them before the season starts. If we have an active season, these are the areas you need to watch out for. And this map was pretty much dead on this year. Next. All right, this is the double hit map. And this map really blows your mind because, as I said in my opening comments, I don't remember a year where we had this many double impacts. But I'm sorry, wrong map. These are not double impacts. Wrong map. This is I had them on a queue here. This is showing the areas that were not impacted this year. This map is showing areas that were not hit by tropical storm force winds this year. Look at the southern, the Windward Islands down here were not impacted. A lot of the tropical storms that came in there petered out. And I know the map shows there were the tropical storms that went through there, but they were downgraded as they went through the southern Windward Islands, so they did not get tropical storm force winds down in those islands. The ABC Islands were quiet this year. Look at Jamaica. They were quiet this year. The whole mainland...
There was chum in the water, though, for Jamaica. I know somebody down there. He was nervous.
Yeah, they had a couple of watches and whatnot up there, and there were some models showing stuff, but models don't... That's the thing about... I'm glad you brought that up, too, because models don't necessarily... Models and watches and warnings don't equals impacts. They might have your heart beating a little faster, but at the end of the season, you were not impacted in Jamaica.
Nope.
By tropical storm force winds. So I'm sorry, but I mean, they just weren't impacted at all. Mainland Mexico.
That goes to show, I mean, I don't remember a lot of long trackers either. There were a lot of, this was very similar to 2005 in this respect. You had a lot of Caribbean, a lot of close-in development that, you don't, that's why those islands like the ABC, the Lesser Antilles, didn't get hit. Is the waves developed west of there or in the Caribbean a lot of the time, which X's that part of the basin out.
Well, I got to kind of stop you on that because that's not entirely, I mean, what really happened was it's not that they weren't developing out there. They were coming through the Caribbean, but the wind shear was ridiculous.
Yeah,
in the Eastern Caribbean
this year. It wouldn't allow them. They were either very weak or non-classified systems at the time.
Right.
I'm glad you cleaned that up. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that was not favorable in the Eastern Caribbean at all this year. Now I know Puerto Rico was impacted, so were the Greater Antilles, but they weren't. It wasn't like 2018, where they were getting bombarded, But and then look at mainland Mexico. They got nothing this year. Look at that map over there in mainland Mexico. When you go to Tampico, Veracruz, at Tuxpan, and none of those areas over there were impacted. And then there's a little area. Let me go back full on this. Look at the area up in the Appalachia Bay. Up in there, nothing. Like Apalachicola quiet, Panacea, Florida was quiet this year. The northern Georgia, southern South Carolina area was quiet. Now, northern South Carolina was impacted by Isaias, and of course the Outer Banks and eastern North Carolina, your area, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, those areas were impacted by Isaias and Tropical Storm Faye. But look up here, eastern Massachusetts, no impacts at all. Cape Cod, Boston, Massachusetts, Bangor, Maine up in here, they hardly ever get hit. Another area that usually gets hit a lot but didn't see anything, Sable Island, Nova Scotia. Eastern, St. John's area didn't get anything. And the Azores out here. That's that little circle on the right-hand side of the map. That's not an actual location of any. I just put that there so people saw that the Azores was included out there. Nothing. And down here in the lower right-hand corner, the Cape Verde Islands were not impacted this year either. So 25 areas not impacted in 2020 out of the 140 in the database. All right. Now, Jack Bevan posted this on Facebook. This is really interesting. These are all the watches and warnings for the United States this year in the Atlantic Basin. I mean, that's incredible. But look at that closely. And remember that area I talked about Panacea, Florida, Apalachicola. Like there's a little sliver in there where there's no warnings or watches. Right up there in the northern Appalachia Bay, there were no, just south of Tallahassee, there were no watches or warnings this year in that little sliver there because they didn't get anything. That was the only area that really didn't get anything in the United States this year.
Meanwhile, Louisiana, 7 different times.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. These are
nuts.
Yeah, storm surge warnings, hurricane warnings, storm surge watches. They had everything between, say, Fort Walton Beach all the way down to southern Texas. They were under the gun quite a bit this year from tropical systems. To go back to your point about Jamaica, you know, that doesn't mean they were hammered this year. The only area really that was hammered was Louisiana and Alabama and a little sliver of the western Florida panhandle. But other than that, all these other areas were really minorly impacted in the whole scheme of things. It was just that whole Louisiana area over towards Alabama that really took a hard hit, took it on the chin this year, so to speak. And of course, this does not include the Caribbean. He didn't show a map for the Caribbean. But it's probably looks kind of similar, though, I would assume. All right, let's go to the next image. This is the double impact map. These are all the areas that were hit by 2 named storms this year. Incredible. You know, needless to say, the Northern Gulf, look at all the circles up there. I mean, it's a double impact season of 2 or more named storms. I mean, rake the Northern Gulf this year. And look at the northeastern Caribbean, the Yucatan Peninsula down here. Look at Honduras and Nicaragua, double impacts. Of course, Iota and Eta. But strangely, look at the Greater Antilles. Look at Hispaniola here. They were hit by 2 storms this year down there. Puerto Rico, same thing. The Bahamas got a couple of double impacts from storms this year. South Carolina, your area up there was impacted by 2 storms this year. The northeastern United States, 2 impacts. Now, granted, they were weak, but still it counts. But here's what's even more interesting about this graphic. Above average seasons are in green. Average to above average. Let's add those in there. Average to above average, because the new average isn't 12 storms. The new average is like 15. But the green areas were impacted this year. That's the Northern Gulf here. A lot of green and blue in there. And the strange thing, though, is the Yucatan, because they generally get hit in a little bit of slower named storm seasons, not necessarily hurricanes. And the western Bahamas kind of surprised me. But again, over here, Hispaniola and Puerto Rico tend to get hit in above average hurricane seasons. So there they go. There you go. Double impacts. But the Northeast, they get hit generally in average to below average, and they got double impacts. So this kind of map was all over the place, but pretty much the Northern Gulf tells the story. Look at all the green in there. That tells you active season. They're going to get hit, and they got twice hit. Or more, 2 or more times in the Northern Gulf.
Yeah, they took it hard.
All right, here's our first, to get to each individual storm that hit this year. Here's our first hurricane to hit the United States this year. This was Hurricane Hannah, and here's where it hit, inevitably came in, just north of Brownsville down there. Notice that's why Brownsville was in my I can check it off my list of impacts this year. They were inside the yellow circle. They got sustained tropical storm force winds down in Brownsville, but the core came in Kennedy County, where all the horses live out there. Nobody lives over in that area. It did hit Corpus Christi, and it came in there with 85 mile per hour winds. Next image here pertaining to Kennedy County.
Probably the safest place in America to have a hurricane come in is Kennedy County.
Yeah, there's nothing there to knock down. It's just there's a farm out there, kind of inland. So here was the wind map from the National Hurricane Center. By the way, this is how I tell what's considered a brush or a hit in my database. And you can see the yellow area reached down into northern Mexico, but it did not get down into La Pesca, which is in the database. So that was below the yellow area. But the hurricane force winds impacted southern Texas here, just a small sliver, including Corpus Christi and Kennedy County. So here's how the National Hurricane, let me go back on our cameras again here. Here is how our the models did on Hannah. I'm going to do this for each storm so people know how the Hurricane Center handled Hannah versus how, actually I got one more graphic on Hannah. Let me pull that up. Yeah, this is the cone from the National Hurricane Center. This is what they said was going to happen. This is going out 2 days. The Hurricane Center showed this coming in north of Corpus Christi and somewhere around the Port O'Connor area, south of Galveston. But it had it coming into the central Texas coastline. This was the National Hurricane Center cone of error 2 days out. And I showed you what happened on the last image, and that was, there it was. There's where it came in, and there's where the Hurricane Center said it was going to be 2 days in advance coming into central Texas. So how did the models perform on this? So here we go. The best performing model on Hannah was the UK Met model. And that was my favorite model this year, by the way. The UK Met model was off by over a 5-day average of 93.7 miles off on track. And on intensity, they were off by only 3 knots over a 5-day period. So the UK Met nailed the track pretty much and the intensity of Hurricane Hannah. The Hurricane Center, this was one of their worst forecasts. They were off by an average of 283 miles at 5 days on an average 5-day. Now, the problem with Hannah is it was a short storm. In other words, they only had a couple of days to track this thing before it moved on shore. So the models have trouble getting a handle on systems. You and I have talked about this. The models, sometimes it takes them a few days to get their sea legs, so to speak, before they start getting their stuff together. And this one had
that issue with the European a lot.
Right, and yeah, the European, in fact, the European isn't even graded in this. The European model was not even graded in Hurricane Hannah because it takes a couple of days to show up in the best track data. And it just didn't show up because this thing moved on shore so fast. So basically, now the Hurricane Center did do a good job on the intensity of this. They won on the intensity. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. The UK Met did not win on the intensity. The Hurricane Center won on intensity. They were predicting a Category 1, and they were off on 0 miles per hour. So they predicted this thing would come in around 85 miles per hour, and that's exactly what it did. The Hurricane Center 1 beat all the models on intensity, but on track, they did terrible on the track, as you saw with the graphic there. But they nailed the intensity. But the UK Met did the best on the track.
Next story.
All right, so let's go to the next one. And this is Isaias. Bill, would you like to say Isaias like 5 times for me, please?
Isaias. There you go. I'll do it once.
That's once. Come on, man.
Isaias. There you go.
I knew you couldn't do it. That's fine. Come on. Try it a little slower this time.
Come up with that name. And the World Meteorological Organization, that committee ought to lose their ability to come up with, ought to lose their credentials to make these names. That name is horrible.
Oh my God. All right, so they should all be fired because of Isaias. Isaias, not Isaias.
Is it Isaias or Isaias? I mean, who knows?
I know that storm drove you crazy, not only because you hated pronouncing it, because it was going to hit your area. It was coming for you, and you had to say it over and over and over again. And we did, but
and we have 30 storms, and I get that one?
Yeah. So here's the official landfall point It hit with 85-mile-per-hour winds in Wilmington. It came right in on them. The donut passed directly over Wilmington, and it was moving south to north. It became a hurricane right before landfall, but it did impact Myrtle Beach, Georgetown, Charleston, areas to the south. But as tropical storm, it did not hit there as hurricane, but it did hit southeastern North Carolina as a hurricane, and then it quickly weakened as it moved north. Now, here's I'm going to play the video of your camera. Bill has a remote camera, and your camera was on the beach. Maybe you can describe what the setup was, because you were there. So give us the setup while I'm trying to cue that up.
This is on the north. This is on the north side of Virginia Beach, the north of what we would consider the tourist area, the Strip. This is the north side of Virginia Beach, where we have our equivalent of our expensive homes. This is where the rich people that can live on the beach live. So this is in the middle of nowhere, secluded area on the north end of right on the north end of Virginia Beach. But
all right, so
my friend was helping me set this up, and we get the one person that lives there that comes out and wants to know what we're doing.
Yeah, so here's the video.
Come on.
All right, I got this queued up. So here's the video. It shows him setting the camera up, and they strapped it to a wooden pole, I think. And then you're going to see some unbelievable lightning. Of course, Isaiah is hit at darkness, so there's not a lot to see. The infrared cameras were capturing the wind, but it really was howling out there. It would have been fun to watch this in the daylight, but here's a short clip from Bill's camera from Virginia Beach. Here it is.
We could be looking at another very similar storm pattern with this one. So
is so low.
It is.
All right, that's just a short clip. I just wanted to show people that wind was really howling out there, and this was your first chance to set your camera up on your own. So I think you did a good job. I mean, it really wasn't, you kind of mounted an area where there's nothing to see, but I mean, it is what it is. And the storm was in the dark anyway, so you wouldn't have seen anything. But
this is an Arlo camera. Thank you to the Arlo company for designing one hell of a camera. We have two of them. You'll see in later videos, if you watch the progression as we go from storm to storm to storm. I'm gonna toot our horn a little bit. We got better and better as we went along, figuring this out.
And all right, so here, this was just the beginning of the usage of these cameras. We'll get to the other shots in just a minute, but Isaiah. Give me let's make this a little fun. What do you think? Okay, who do you think, including the National Hurricane Center versus all the models, who do you think did the best on Hurricane Isaias based on track?
I'll give the Hurricane Center. Track wasn't. I don't remember being that. It was more of a speed thing. I'll give the Hurricane Center. I bet they outperformed the models with this one.
You nailed it. NHC was off by 165 miles on average. The models did horribly on Isaias from the beginning of its long track. Because remember, Isaias came through the Caribbean, and it went up and zigzagged all over the place, and through the Bahamas and up the East Coast and stayed off the coast of Florida. Remember the hurricane, the models had it coming into Florida as a hurricane, the whole 9 yards. It never happened. The models were terrible on this. The GFS was off by, the GFS was the worst. Actually, the HMON was the worst on track. The GFS was the second worst. The Euro was the third worst. The UK Met was the fourth. HWRF was fifth, and the model with the least error, believe it or not, was the Canadian model on Isaias. Now, who do you think did the best on the intensity of Isaias?
I would probably say models on that one.
Well, which model?
I should have looked this one up before the show because I'm going to guess here. Given its history of how it performed this year, let's try the UK Met.
You're wrong. The best performing model on Isaias as far as intensity is concerned is the HMON model, the tropical model.
What?
It was only off by 12.2 knots on intensity. So
Damn.
and remember, a lot of the models were predicting hurricane. I really wasn't buying it. I know a lot of people were like, well, I don't know. There's a lot of, shear. It's not really favorable, blah, 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 blah. And those tropical models were a little aggressive this year. So they pretty much nailed that Isaias becoming a hurricane right before landfall.
Yep.
NHC was right behind the HMON. They were pretty good. And the Euro and the NHC were right behind the HMON on intensity on the
Good marks for NHC on Isaias.
Yeah, they did both good on Hannah and Isaias. Except Hannah, they were a little off on the track at 2 days, but pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the next image here. Here's the Isaias cone. This was 2 days out. Let's see. That's Sunday. But yeah, this is 2 days out from making landfall. And you can see what the National Hurricane Center thought was going to happen here. They were indicating it was going to be a hurricane for the Florida coastline, and then a tropical storm going into North Carolina. It turned out the opposite. It became a hurricane when it hit North Carolina. And I think it was a hurricane off the coast of Florida, but it didn't hit. It was a brush, and most of the wind stayed offshore. And then impacted South Carolina and North Carolina. Figure somebody has to come to the door right in the middle of the show. Barkass is going nuts.
If you need a break, I'll
No, I'm good.
You good?
So, eastern North Carolina, it did hit there. It did hit your area, so they had that track right. It's just that the North Carolina thing, they had it as a storm, and they had it a little bit further to the west coming in, and it ended up being a little bit further east than what this is indicating here.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the first of about. I did the math. We did about 30 hours of hurricane coverage together. That was 6 hours of it right there. If you include that storm in there. So what a year. That was the start of it.
All right, so let me see if I can get Barkass in here for a minute.
Yeah.
Come on. Get in here. Come on. Come here. Come on. Come on. All right.
Come on.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you Barkass. Where is he? Come here.
Come here, boy.
What are you doing? Come here.
Come
Nobody
on.
can see you, for goodness sake. Come here.
Move the camera.
I can't. He's. There he is.
Come here, boy.
What are you barking at? He wants to get back out where the action is.
All right, let him go. We tried.
Never mind. He's too heavy to lift. The dog weighs like 100 pounds.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
Yeah. All right. So sorry about that. Barkass was going to make his cameo. He blew it. And by the way, he's not an ass. He's I call him Barkass because he barks at everything. Like, I didn't say tomorrow. I said as soon as they fix the windows and they get the drapes out of there. No, tell him no. It's not done yet. So All right, so love these distractions.
Okay, we moving on from Isaias. Next storm.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. This is the landfall of Hurricane Laura. Laura was number 3 on our list this year, and Laura came ashore with 150-mile-per-hour winds. Now, this was the most intense hurricane to hit the United States this year. This was by far the most badass hurricane that roamed that impacted the United States this year, without a doubt. I mean, this was the one for, hitting the deck, the kind of hurricane that you stay under your mattress in your house. You worry about your house blowing down. You worry about your roof coming off.
130 up in Lake Charles.
Yeah, so it was really bad.
Yes.
Now, here was the official landfall date. This was on August 22nd, the 27th rather, at 2 o'clock in the morning. Came in there with winds of, like you said, about 130 to 150 mile per hour gusts. We did cover this storm. This was the first one we did a full coverage on this hurricane season.
It was remote.
What's that?
It was remote.
Yeah, it was remote. I was not there. Bill and I were on the phone. Here's what happened with this. We were watching. I was going to go. I had every anticipation of going there and filming this, and the track kept shifting west and west. And then there was even a point where they were thinking it was going to come into Texas. And for me to get here from South Florida all the way to Texas, that quickly wasn't going to happen. So I kind of had to cancel it. And as much as I didn't want to do it, and I also thought about the fact that it was coming in the middle of the night. There was going to be a high storm surge predicted. Bill and I powwowed on the phone and decided, let's skip this one. It's not going to happen. It's too far west. And in hindsight, it was the wrong decision. We should have went and covered this. It was one of those ones where, we're like, what do we do? Do we not do it? It's too far to drive. My work was not in the way. I had the chance to do it. It just didn't work out. And it was one of those, left a bad taste in my mouth this hurricane season for intercepts. But we did cover that archive, and we have about an hour long, maybe 45-minute archive of all the most interesting moments from Hurricane Laura's landfall. But there's all these copyright issues and people worrying about them restreaming their stuff. And from that point forward, Bill and I decided I'm going to go and get in every storm the remainder of the season if I can. I mean, this isn't going to happen again. But the archive is really fun to watch.
His name, but I will say what he said. You were literally hearing someone, one of the chasers, which we were streaming at the time, said, "You're going to pay me for my content."
Yeah.
In a category 4, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and can I clarify this once again? What Bill and I do here, it's kind of like a hobby. We're not doing this as some kind of a professional entity. We're not corporatizing this. We're not selling it. We're not making any money on it. We're just covering the story. So anybody that thinks somehow we're breaking their copyright rules is absurd, because there's so many labels all over our archives. No news organization could possibly use it anyway. And furthermore, it's a restream, so it's somewhat pixelated, and it's just unusable. So anybody that's worried about us restreaming their product as a storm chaser, believe me, I'm going to tell you something. I recoiled from a lot of chaser friends of mine this year because of this reason. They've left a bad taste in my mouth. If you're so more worried about going out and corporatizing what you're doing and selling your video to the networks, and that's all you're there for, shame on you, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. I could care less what you're doing. I really could care less. We're going to do this.
By the way, now this will change with the digital photography, but if you look at that video, most of it, it's Periscope. It's pixelated garbage. For him to complain about that is a joke.
Yeah, it was very disappointing, and and it's not just him; it's other chasers out there. Timmer's pretty cool. He's okay with it, but I mean, it's just they're so locked down. It's so covered. It's oh, it's my little baby video. I got to protect it. And it's so absurd on the face of it. I mean, you know what guys I really respect? I mean, guys like Tony Bright out there that have been doing this for 20 plus years. I know he sells some of his video, but at the same time, you know, he's not out corporatizing it. He's just out there because he enjoys it and he films it, and he probably shows it more to his family at home than anybody on TV sees it. So, I mean, it's like, look, we're just trying to tell the story here, and we're not out trying to corporatize.
Now, I don't want to make this about me, but if people knew the hell that you and I went through for a couple of these storms, just from a technical standpoint, I don't do this for my health, ladies and gentlemen. I do it because I love hurricanes and I love the hobby in general.
Yeah, if you're doing it for your health, you're trying to drive yourself into the hospital.
I mean, long story short, Sally almost didn't happen with us together because of a technical issue. I was dealing with a computer problem that I had to work on for 3.5 hours, plus be up all night to cover it. But it got done. I don't do that for my health. But now is a good time that we've gone into all the copyright stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why your donations are so important. It's $1,000 per chase to do this, for the most part. Jim doesn't use that money to pay his cable bill and his light bill. It goes right back into expenses and right back into paying for equipment and things like that. It's not just to make his life easier. It's to improve the product. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I want to show you this this little thing here. This is a wireless mic, and this is the windscreen for the wireless mic. And this little gadget just alone is like $160. With this is another, $30 or whatever. So it's a $200 item for one of these. They're going to be getting another one for next year for inside the truck, one for outside the truck. Then you've got the weather instruments. We had some failures, some things that worked, some things that didn't work. There was a lot of money back and forth going into that. And then you have the software like we're running here tonight, the downloads, the travel expense. And the fact of the matter is, for me to pull away from my job cost me way too much money. It's the expenses. Let me put it to you this way. And the expenses only cover, the donations rather that I get only cover about half of the expenses in an average hurricane season. Meanwhile, I see everybody out there, and I know we have COVID, and I understand it. A lot of people are hurting right now, but at the same time, I'm seeing a lot of other guys doing this hurricane stuff as a hobby, and they're making tons of money. This is a travesty. And I love the people that have supported Hurricane City, but such a small crowd that it's not even making a dent in what we're trying to get done here. And I see guys like the guy up in Tampa. You got Mark. You got a bunch of guys out there that have money coming in, and we're talking.
We're hamming it up, and we're trying to do this. It's about the science. It's about the storm itself. It's not about. It's a little bit about entertainment, but we're trying to do it the right way.
Well, it's a little of everything. It's a little. Bill and I yuck it up every now and then. We do it for the science aspect. I show the wind speed as I'm actually on film. I'm showing you the wind speed as it's happening. You're listening to the sounds. You're seeing things breaking apart. My video. Well, I'll show you some of the videos coming up here. Some really good video. Fish flopping in the street. Storm surge. It's crazy. And you've got these guys out there.
What did you call me when we were doing we had the whole fish thing go as we were going to get the cameras? You called me a cold-hearted bastard.
Yeah, because you wanted me to get back to the truck and focus on the storm, and I'm like, I want to save all these fish, but I could, you'll see that video in a minute. But the fact that I want to wrap up the panhandling thing because I hate it. I cannot stand this aspect of the hurricane business. I don't get on Patreon because I don't want to be obligated to anybody. Patreon is a platform where you promise the audience A, B, and C, and then they pay you for A, B, and C. I
It's a
can't
tiered
do that.
system.
What?
It's a tiered system. A, B, and C. It's tiered. You reach this, you get this. You reach that, you get that. That's how it works.
Yeah, I don't want to become a circus animal over this. Like people say, well, we're going to give you $100 if you go and actually court punch into a tornado or something. I'm not going to do that, but that's my point. Like Patreon encourages people to, if you do this, I'll pay you this much. If you do that, I'll pay. So I'm just not going there, and I don't have the time. Like I said, I got the business I run on the side. I cannot just get up and leave to appease 50 people that want me to go do something. So I don't do the Patreon thing. What I'm asking the people that donate normally to Patreon or one of these other platforms is say, look at the body of work. Look at the video archive page. Go to Hurricane City. Look at the video archive page. There's hundreds of videos on there that we've covered either in them or covering other people in them or the media or whatever we're able to find. So people, when people are in the hurricane, they can go back.
Weather disaster is up there. You can't. I mean, it's a science treasure trove.
The point is, people can go back when they're in the hurricane. They can go back and see how it was covered on the internet. That's why we do what we do.
Yep.
So if you're in Pensacola and you get wiped out, you can go back a month later when you get your internet back, if you're lucky enough to get your internet back, and you can watch the archive. It'll be 30, 45 minutes. It'll show all the different media. It'll show all the chasers. It'll show all the everything. But we've had to condense that now into our own cocoon, so to speak, because of copyright issues. And so it's more expensive now than it's ever been. And the people that are donating, I love you, but we need more. We need spread the word. We need more people putting money into the pie because it's just not cutting it. It's not.
And it's
cutting
not the major networks giving us the problem. It's pretty much I'll say it again for you. It's the private chasers that want to whine over their video, and it's really.
Let me stop you. Let me stop you because here's what it is. The chasers are going to go to get that storm, and they're the whole time they're on the phone with ABC, CBS, the Weather Channel, wherever they can get their tentacles out there to sell the video. Bill and I aren't doing that. We're not sitting there on the phone with the Weather Channel. Hey, I'm around the corner. Can you come and watch what I'm doing? Can I sell you the video? If I wanted to, I could do that. I'm not going to sit there and waste the entire chase worrying about selling my video. I'm out there to give the people that are donating to Hurricane City, I'm talking directly to them the entire storm. I'm not caring about the Weather Channel or CBS or CNN or NBC or anybody. I only care about the people that are donating to Hurricane City. That's what it's for, basically.
I'm going to use this term once. It's not PC, but here you go. We are not publicity whores. It's never been about us. It's never been about. We want to make it about. We love hurricanes in general. We love doing this, and we want the ability. The money that you guys give us or donate to this makes it easier for us to improve the product and advance this going forward. Because what I truly believe, we're right on the cusp of really doing this the right way consistently.
Yeah. And speaking of which, let me check and see if anybody. No, there's nothing. It's probably live on Periscope, but I can't.
Third time it's done that.
What?
The little buzz noise from the mic.
Oh, I haven't heard anything.
Are you
all
at
right, so
range of it? Where's the receiver at? Because it's
I'm on a headset, so I don't want to get into technical stuff right now. It's just that once in a while, don't worry about it.
Be careful.
Well, I'm clicking around on stuff here because remember I was going to check the chat to see if there's any activity in there. That might be what it is, so don't worry about it. But all right, let's get on with the images.
Yeah, enough with the.
All right, so here was the complete history of Hurricane Laura, And notice all the islands that were impacted. This is a big reason why the Greater Antilles were so heavily impacted by 2 storms this year. But look at this, the tropical storm over Puerto Rico, the Northern Leeward Islands, Hispaniola, Haiti. Notice Jamaica did not get impacted by Laura. They probably had some sort of watch up or warning or something. Cuba, all of Cuba was impacted by Laura. Then it became a hurricane in the Gulf and hit western Louisiana. And the tropical storm force winds extended all the way over to Morgan City. And New Orleans was spared that. I remember the media was obsessed with New Orleans over that. And again, that's the Weather Channel. And that's another thing about our broadcast. We're never going to go to the wrong place. Like, we're always covering where the core is coming in, because that's what matters, really. I mean, the core of these things.
And
so
we wait now until the core gets there. We do that for a reason.
Yep, we wait for the donut to move on shore, because that's when all the action's going to go down. That's when all the bad damage is going to take place. And so that's why we wait. And, let all the other networks hype it up. But I'm not interested in 40-mile-per-hour winds 150 miles away from the center.
No.
All right. Here's what the Hurricane Center had. Now, they did really good on this. Here's the cone of error from the National Hurricane Center on Laura.
Can you take that full, or it's a little?
I thought it was. I'm not full. I'm sorry. Yeah, let me. There we go. There is the cone of error from the National Hurricane Center, and this is going out 3 days, and they nailed it. They absolutely nailed the track on this 3 days out. So, and they said it was going to be a hurricane. So let's see how the models did on this. Well, let me ask you, okay, on track, what model and or NHC do you think, and I'm just going to include NHC, so when I ask you these questions, you got to take NHC into consideration.
Okay.
What models did the best on the track of Laura, do you think?
I'll go with the HMON or Icon on this one.
You are wrong. It was the UK Met model was the best. They were better even than the National Hurricane Center. They were off by 114.3 miles over a 5-day average. Second was the GFS did pretty good on it, 116. Better than NHC, actually.
Not had a bad year.
Third place went to the H-Wharf. Fourth place, the H-Mon. Fifth place was the Euro model. Sixth place was the Canadian. Seventh place was the NavGem. And the Hurricane Center was right in the middle, 180 miles off. So they were right equal with like the H-Wharf, and they were equal with the tropical models. But the UK Met was by far the best on Laura's track. Now, what do you think about intensity? Who did the best on intensity?
I'm giving this one to the NHC.
The UK Met also did the best on intensity on this. So the UK Met won this one hands down on a track and intensity. The UK Met was off by 19 knots over a 5-day period on average.
Won.
The second best was the HMON model. Third place came to the NHC. Fourth place came to the Canadian model, the CMC. Actually, I don't have the Euro in here. I guess it wasn't tracked at the time or something. GFS is next, followed by the NavGem, followed by the HWRF. That did the worst. The H-Wharf was the worst on Laura. And I remember why. Because I remember when Laura was tracking, some of the models actually took Laura into South Florida as a hurricane.
I remember that.
And the tropical models had it busted into South Florida as like a Cat 4. And that didn't pan out because Laura went over Cuba and it stayed weak and it went further south.
Weaker systems further south and west.
That's right. That's right. All right, so let's continue on with our images. So here was the, let me zoom in on this. Here was the final tally on the position era. This is graphic for you. And here you can see the color-coded in. Again, can I thank Chris Hollis at Tropical Atlantic for creating this ability to color-code these things? This is awesome. And what it does is it allows us to calculate the best performing models, and green would be best, red would be worse. So if you're quickly glancing at the charts on the best track data at Hurricane City, which is always below the tracking map on the front page, the green models, you can always tell which models are doing the best because they're shaded in green. So the UK Met is the EGRR model, and that was off at the time this picture was taken, 67.8, the best by far. The GFS was second, followed by the Euro number 3, the Canadian number 4, NavGem number 5. Just wanted to show you that graphically, so
Jim,
you can
can
kind
you
of
explain a little bit more about what Chris does? We often don't give him enough credit on these in this kind of format.
Yeah, so what Chris does, Chris runs tropicalatlantic.com, and he's a statistical guru. I mean, this guy, he's based in Tampa, and he actually, I think, designs websites on the side or something. He has a web hosting design type website, but what he does with the hurricane stuff is he gathers the best track data and puts it in graphical form, plus he does that with the Hurricane Hunter program. You've seen others out there do it. There's a couple other people I think that are doing the Hurricane Hunters, like Levi Cowan over at Tropical Tidbits, and I think there's one other person out there that's doing. I can't remember. There's a guy that's on Twitter that. Oh gosh, what's his? It's tropicsweather.com. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry if I forgot what it is, but anyway, he does the Hurricane Hunter program too. But there's a few of us out there to do it. When I say us, it's because it's embedded in Hurricane City and it's watchable through the main map. But Chris gathers that data, and that's all done on the Hurricane City servers. All that stuff is done on our servers. That's all downloaded data from the best track data ATCF files at the National Hurricane Center, and it's graphically produced so you can see the best performing models. You can see the tracks. You can pick any model you want and figure out where it's going to go and all that. The data is just fantastic. But Chris puts it in form where you can see it on Google Maps. He does the same thing with the Hurricane Hunters. You can see it on Google Maps. You can see it at Hurricane City on the maps. You can see it at Tropical Atlantic. And Chris also, whenever I run into an HTML jam at Hurricane City, I do everything from scratch in HTML at Hurricane City. So whenever I screw up something or I don't know what I'm doing, I can refer to Chris and he can figure it out or maybe do a workaround for it. So Chris is just fantastic. And, you know, some of the donations actually go to Chris to help him with his expenses over there. So that's another expense from the donations that people give to Hurricane City. It partially gets spread over to Chris too. So there's a lot what your money goes to when you donate to Hurricane City, and Chris is a part of it, and I just can't thank him enough over in Tampa. So hopefully Chris is watching. I'm sure he's watching tonight.
Moving on.
All right, so thanks for bringing that up, by the way, to thank Chris. All right, so let's go to our next image. Oh, and by the way, I think yeah, so let's get off of that. This is the next storm, but let's get off of this for a minute. And we have video from oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're wrong. Let me go back.
No, we're still on Laura. We've not moved on.
Yeah, we're still on Laura. Let me go back to this. So this is the Sally forecast from the National Hurricane Center. This is what Sally said what the Hurricane Center said Sally was going to do 2 days in advance. Basically, it's 1 a.m. Monday, and it hit basically in the middle of the night on Tuesday when it made landfall in Alabama. So this was a 2-day forecast from the National Hurricane Center. They were way off on this at 2 days. Notice they had it coming in western Mississippi near New Orleans as a hurricane. It did come in as a hurricane, but it came in much further east. So let's go to the next image. Now here was Sally when it was offshore. This was on September 15th. It had winds of 80 miles per hour. It actually lowered down. It was like 100 at one point, and then it went down to 80 miles per hour. Now, I was in Gulf Shores at the time, and Bill and I were on the phone, and we were saying, oh, my God, this is a bust. This thing's falling apart. It must have completely screwed this up. They were showing shear. The models were right on showing shear for this, but what the models did not pick up on was the fact that this was going to be closing in on major hurricane. It didn't get to major, but it was strengthening as it came in Alabama, and it got up to 105 mile per hour winds.
Had it not did that little weakening phase, I fear what this thing would have been.
Right, exactly. That's a good point. It might have been much stronger than it was if it had not gone through that weakening phase temporarily when the wind shear and the dry air got a hold of it. So here's landfall. Here's what ended up happening. September 16th. This is 7 a.m. in the morning. It's finally making its way on shore, but the majority of these high winds came in the darkness of
The majority of
the
it was like between like 3 and about 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. I was there. I'm going to show you some clips here in a minute, but it was terrifying because it was all happening in the middle of the night. The winds were really strong on Gulf Shores and the coastal areas up into the inland areas and Foley and up in there. There was a lot of wind coming in, these northern feeder bands on the northern side of the eye wall. But here's the official landfall. Came in Gulf Shores, 105 mile per hour winds at 7 a.m. as the sun was coming up. But again, the majority of this was in the middle of the night in the darkness. So here's the video. Let's cue it up here. And here is our intercept of Bill was covering it at home base, and I was on the road in Gulf Shores, Alabama.
I mean, there's some little pulses coming in there that are really violent. Look at this. What is it?
Surge going full screen. I can clearly see it on the beach camera. Surge has come in there. I'm pretty sure that is storm surge, ladies and gentlemen. Hard to tell at night, but that was sudden. Oh, without a doubt, Jim, this is storm surge. Gotta be.
Hope it doesn't get too high. I only had that thing about 6 feet up.
Yeah, well.
All right, that was it. I just wanted to show the storm surge and, as it was coming in. And so now I'm going to show the setup we had for this. I think I have that. Let me see. Yeah. So here is here's the boulevard where the camera was set up. So there's, obviously we're facing west. The east is facing the south part of the image. The surge was coming in on that camera shot where that arrow is. And you saw that debris flowing down this street. This whole street was probably underwater at one point when that surge came in, or at least a good part of it was. The camera was mounted. It wasn't, I'm not sure if it was here. But for example, like see this mast arm over here? Right in here. Hold on, let me get the grand going. So right in here is about where the camera would be mounted. and it was aiming that way, aiming west. And so it was about 5-6 feet off the ground, and it was able to catch what was happening on the boulevard here. And then the other camera was over here on the beach, over here to the west, to the south rather. The camera was on the beach, strapped to a palm tree. Okay, next image. So here's what happened after the hurricane hit. My location is up here at the top. You see the yellow button at the top of the screen. That's where I was located during the storm. Sorry, let me go back. So that yellow pin is where I was located during the storm. So when the storm was over, when Sally was done, the next morning, I wanted to go retrieve those cameras. See the two cameras down there with the two red circles? Those were where the cameras were mounted. And I had to get over that bridge and get to the beach to go get those cameras. But see, the whole area was flooded. That whole road was underwater because the surge.
Wait.
What's that?
We had to wait, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Staying at
surge,
didn't you?
Yeah, had to wait. The surge came in, flooded this whole area between the, where I was located and the beach. And then this other area up here at the top of the image was also flooded over here. So what I did was, and I didn't film this live because it was kind of embarrassing, but I went over to this flooded area at the top to try to cut through to the beach because it's like a park up in there. And the video footage I'm going to show you shortly from Delta is very similar to what I was driving through in Sally to get to those remote cameras. I got all the way to the end of this road. I drove about a mile, got very close to the Ocean Avenue to get to those cameras, and the water got too deep. So I had to go in reverse with my truck all the way back the way I came because I couldn't turn around because the road was completely flooded on either side of the road, so there was no room. The water was too deep. There was no room to turn around, so I had to back that vehicle all the way out, a mile in reverse. And all I could picture was somebody in their condominium on the beach filming this and putting it on the Weather Channel like, oh my God, look at this idiot going in reverse through water that's like 3 feet deep. And it's like, forget it. So I backed out. I got out of there. I didn't want to be a poster child for the Weather Channel. So I waited overnight.
It's going moron. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I waited overnight. And that's when you and I talked and we said, okay, just let's wait for the water to subside. We'll go out the next morning and go get it. I got on the phone with you and decided, okay, I'm gonna go up to the police checkpoint and I'm gonna tell them that I have to get in there, that I'm with the DOT. And then with my truck with the yellow flashing light and the utility truck, they let me in. And I got over that bridge and I got to where the floodwaters were, this southern flood area down here, the one that's near the beach.
Yep.
And the Weather Channel was there filming. I was the first one to get through that floodwater, and they were filming it, and the water was about probably 1.5 feet deep, and I went through it, and I got through to the other side. And I went and got those cameras, came back, drove through the floodwaters again, and got out of Dodge, hit up to I-10. I went through Foley. I looked at all the damage up there. In fact, I think I have a couple more pictures here. Let me see. No, I don't. I don't have them queued up. I didn't bring those. But your aunt's area up there, Bill, you want to explain a little bit? In a nutshell here, kind of explain to the audience what you were dealing with, because you had family up there, inland a little bit. They were completely freaked out.
I'm going to be very careful of what I say because it's family, and I don't want to turn this into the complaint show, but it is very difficult to do this and focus on this when you have family in the storm itself. It's a real bitch, to be honest with you, because they don't feel alone. They want a blow by blow analysis of everything, but it was mainly damage, broken broken trees, lots of tree damage, crops destroyed, roofs. There were a couple of non-secured roofs. I know my aunt's neighbor, the roof was down you could see the wood. You're not supposed to see wood when you look at a roof. When
Right.
you see wood, you know you're in trouble. So that he's got to have that roof completely redone.
Yeah, that area got hit hard. I mean, no doubt about it. I went inland. I looked at where your aunt lives, and there was some structural damage. There was some power lines dangling here and there. It wasn't as bad as what I saw with, obviously Michael or,
Michael's in a class by itself, and Laura's in a class by herself.
Yeah, there were other hurricanes that were far worse, but it for somebody that's not used to it, like your aunt. I mean, I know it shocked her, it terrified her.
She was, for lack of a better term, she was educated, as I like to joke. She got her walking.
Rung.
She never wants to go through that again. But the biggest lesson she learned is you got to have a generator. You got to have. Yeah. She did not have, and this is what. If she watches this, I don't care. You've got to have your supplies.
Yeah, that was listening to you and your aunt, and before, during, and after this whole thing tells you that you've got to be prepared for these things, because you can't just write off hurricane. I mean, you live in the Northern Gulf, for crying out loud. You got to know that they're coming, and you got to be prepared. You got to have generator backup. I know some people can't do that because they live in condos, apartments, things like that. But if you live in a house like she does, you got to have a generator to crank up after the hurricanes. Run some extension cords. You can run a wall unit air conditioning. You can cool your house off.
Run a TV,
run a refrigerator, run a TV, run a radio. You can run a fan when you're in your living room or something. It makes you feel like you're at least human, and you're not living in squalor, because everything starts to stink. You're sweaty. You got to have a generator. And
let me give you. I'll go back to Isaias for a minute. I live in a one-bedroom apartment, so I don't have the luxury of buying a generator. I can't do it. Can't have it in an apartment. 13 hours without power. Let me tell you, if it had gone any longer, it was starting to get a little warm, a little toasty in here. It sucked.
Yeah,
that's what you've got to have. You've got to have a generator. You've got to have. But the one thing that I want to say is, she called me and said, "You can't call me anymore because I can't charge my phone." That pissed me off.
Yeah, you got to be able to charge your accessories and stuff. You have to have, and if you live in a condo or an apartment, at least have a battery pack. You have battery packs for that very reason.
I'm gonna go grab one right now.
Go show the audience that, and it's probably a good thing people should buy one of these batteries. Yeah, there it is.
Look at this.
Like, it's the size of like a woman's wallet or something. Like, it weighs like what, a pound or two or something.
No, maybe a pound and a half, if that.
And you can charge your phones. You can charge anything. I mean, they're really powerful, and they can give you 100% on your phone. And so it's really a necessity if you don't have a generator.
I'm going to take money out of it. How much do you think I paid for this, Jim?
$50.
$13 on Amazon.
Wow, nice. And they have all different size batteries too. You can buy some that are bigger, like 13,000 mAh or whatever they call that, where you can run like
this is close to a 13,000 mAh battery. This is what this is. This is a Mophie battery, but it's the 2017 model. That's why I got it so cheap.
And that's what we were using to run our cameras, the D-Link camera, when we recovered Hurricane Michael, the remote camera. So they definitely work. All right, so let's get on with the. Before we get to Delta, Sally, which model do you think performed the best on Sally?
I think I know this, because isn't this the one we used? UK Met, if I'm not mistaken.
You are wrong, sir. Believe it or not, it was the Canadian model. The CMC had the best track on this, 89.1 miles over a 5-day period. Second best was the HMON tropical model.
Mhm.
Third best was the NavGem, believe it or not. NavGem is usually, I'm sorry, third best was the GFS. Then came the NavGem. Then came the Euro. Then came the H-Wharf. The National Hurricane Center was, 1, 2, 3, 4. They were like 5th place. They didn't do very well on the track at all. And it's because of that graphic I showed you earlier. The cone took it into western Mississippi, and that simply didn't happen. Now, as far as intensity, who do you think did the best on Sally?
On Sally, I would have to say the models, not NHC.
Which model?
Remind me to do my homework next year.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. The models aren't, NHC is included in the models. So
I'll take the UK. I'll take the I forgot the question.
I knew that's what you were driving at. You forgot what the question was. I love it. It happens to me all the time.
Years for me to do
I completely have like a brain fart. I'm like, oh my God, what am I even saying?
All right, try again.
Did I torture you enough? All right.
Okay. You're good. You're
All
good.
right.
Now,
The best on the intensity was the Canadian. Again, track and intensity. The Canadian nailed Sally.
we made fun of the Canadian in previous years. I wonder what they've
Yeah.
done with that model.
Well, you know what? The Canadian model this year was kind of low on all the intensity of all these storms. Like, it was always struggling to intensify all these storms. But on this one, it actually worked because remember, Sally weakened as it approached the coast. And I think it won the battle on the weakness thing, thinking the dry air and the shear was going to get a hold of Sally.
Yeah.
So the Canadian was the best. Second best was the UK Met. Third was NHC. Fourth was the HMON. Fifth was the H-Wharf, followed by the GFS, then the NavGem. Pretty interesting, though. All right, so let's get on with the images.
Delta's the fun one. That's coming as far as NHC
Yeah.
models
All right, so
and everything else.
we can't forget that Delta did hit the Yucatan, and here was Delta. We full screen now. Let me get that highlighted. There we go. So there was Delta on October 7th. Believe it or not, the majority of our action this hurricane season happened after the height of the hurricane season.
Which is
So here we are, October 7th, 7 a.m. It's hitting the Yucatan as a major hurricane. I know Reed Timmer and Josh Morgan both flew down there, and I know they probably had regrets because it ended up weakening. I think as it came in, it really didn't amount to very much. And, I mean, when I say it doesn't amount to very much, I mean, I'm sure it still walloped the area pretty good where the core came in. But I think those guys were a little disappointed at what they got down there. And then you
don't go that distance from the U.S. for a Category 2, I'm sorry.
Well, it was a Cat 3. I mean, you got to realize that thing was a monster. I think he got up to like 130 or something.
It got up to 130, 140, and then the wheels come off slightly.
Right. So there was the anticipation that this was going to be a big deal for the Yucatan, and it just kind of petered out as it came in there.
Yeah.
And across the Yucatan, see what next. So here's the video. It hit right near Intracoastal City, Louisiana, between Intracoastal City, Louisiana, and Lake Charles. So remember, Lake Charles was already hit by Laura, and so here comes Delta. I went and intercepted this. So here is the Delta video. I'm not going to stop it in between, but it really pay attention to see what's up on the screen right now. watch that screen at the very beginning of the video. You're going to see power flashes all over the place. Then you're going to see the rest of the video. It's a very short video, but this is the highlights from Hurricane Delta when it came into Louisiana.
Sit back and enjoy.
So here we go.
Whoa! There goes the power. Look at this. Look at this circuit's going.
We got it. Just roll it.
Well, they're flowing all over the place now. I think the areas that are going to end up hardest hit are going to be like Jennings, Crowley, Lake Arthur.
Oh, look at this camera. Damn. Yeah.
If he don't come back this way in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to know he made it.
There you go. Or he's stuck.
But yeah.
I have to mouth that one.
I still see the spray coming off his truck. I'm keeping an eye with the door open here.
Okay.
I just can't find the center line.
Think the road's washed out a little bit, or is that just debris?
That's debris.
Did you ever find your center line?
No.
No.
I think I'm on it, though. That's what rattles the truck. Every time I hit one of those reflectors. Ah, dry land ahead.
Yay!
I almost got stuck.
I'm sure you did.
That mud is like a foot thick over there.
Wow.
Hear what I said on the, if you were listening to the camera, there was a frog living, a frog set up camp inside that holder. Are those all fish? Yeah, those are all fish flopping in the water. Let me get this.
Oh, stop.
All flopping around.
Yeah.
They're pilchards. They're like bait fish.
Storm surge swept them in.
Yeah. Look at them all. There's hundreds of them in here. Look at them all. They're all swarmed up over here. Look, there's a shrimp. Look at this.
Wow.
Look at the shrimp. What else I can find in here?
The fish.
Fish.
Yep.
To save him, I just threw him in the water over there. Of course, that water's going to dry up anyways.
All right. So that, I mean, I know we have a lot of things to talk about here with Delta. So, all right. First of all, the timing on getting down there. This was another one of those last-second decisions. Went down, but actually this Delta was the most, what's the word I'm looking for? probably the smoothest intercept. Well, I don't know. I'd have to put Michael right in there with that. But Delta had so many neat, interesting things that happened during that journey that it really was probably the most. I don't want to say fun because it's really not. It's not fun for the people that it was hitting. But I mean, from a chaser perspective, it was the most fun that I had. On an intercept, no doubt. And the thing about it is, the truck performed brilliantly. The equipment performed pretty good. I mean, it was most of the time everything was fine. At your end, everything was working pretty good. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on Delta?
Delta, I'm very. I don't think, considering what we were dealing with. I don't think we could have done. I don't think we could have done any better. I mean, it's hard for you to get to Western Louisiana.
Yeah, and I had to go all the way to Abbeville, by the way.
And go to Abbeville. And I'm going to give you your 5 minutes, or I'm sorry, 2 minutes on the roads in Louisiana. They suck.
Oh, my God. That truck took such a beating. In fact, when I got home, I realized that there's these little grommet, like rubber bushings that are underneath the cab. They were completely torn up. They were all rotted out from the salt water and cracked. And so now I either have to get those replaced. It's going to cost like $1,200, or I'm thinking of just maybe trading in for a new truck. I'm still working on that right now, so I might have a new vehicle, chase vehicle for next season, which I'll write that off on my business, but that'll be the new vehicle for intercepting, and I'll be able to go longer distances with that too. If we have to go to Texas, perhaps, Bill may join me on a journey or something. We'll see about that.
Okay.
There's a lot to consider, but back to Delta. Delta is, it hit, the sad thing about it is it impacted the same people badly that were impacted by Laura. So it was like a double hit for those people in Western Louisiana. Then you had the whole area. Abbeville was hit very hard. Power was out for a long period of time. Intracoastal City was heavily damaged. Then you get into areas like Lafayette, I think, took a hit pretty good, and there were areas in Morgan City. I was listening to the radio on the way back, and even areas where Morgan City is, and Baton Rouge was hit pretty hard by that. So there were a lot of inland areas that were not under the core that were heavily impacted by Delta.
Well, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble probably with this. The Hurricane Center was bad on intensity. This was bad.
All right, so here's the map. I got the map up.
Go full screen on that, please.
All right, so here's what the Hurricane Center said was going to be Delta was going to do. This was when it was in the Yucatan, that graphic I just showed you. This is 2 days in advance, and they nailed the track on this. I got to be honest with you, they absolutely nailed the track on this. They split the difference between Intracoastal City and Lake Charles, and that's exactly where it came in. That's exactly where it ended up coming in. And they had it as a major offshore, but coming onshore as a regular hurricane. So they kind of nailed that intensity on this too. So the Hurricane Center did a really, really good job on Delta.
Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong storm. They were off by a category and a half on one of them. Almost 2 categories.
I don't think Sally, perhaps. I mean, well, no, it's Zeta. You're thinking of Zeta.
I'm thinking of the wrong one.
Yeah, Zeta. All right, so we're on Delta here. We're going to get to Zeta in a little while.
Yeah, we'll get to Zeta in a little bit.
So we have Delta. They nailed this track on Delta. So tell me, again, which model do you think did the best on the track of Delta?
Probably wrong again. GFS, maybe?
Wait a minute. No, you're wrong. You're close.
I would have said GFS or UK, man.
It was the National Hurricane Center.
Oh.
And well, look at the cone. I mean, they nailed it.
No, they nailed the cone.
NHC nailed Delta, and they were off by 106.7 miles on average. Compare that to the models. The best performing model was the GFS at 118. So you were right technically on that, but the NHC outperformed them.
Even the broken watch is right twice a day. That's the first one I've gotten right tonight. Model-wise.
Second best performer on the track was the H-Mon. The third best was the European model. The fourth best was, I'm sorry, I got that screwed up. The second best was the UK Met. The third best was, the third best was the H-Mon. Then came the HWRF, the Euro, the Canadian, then the NavGem. So on intensity, which model did the best on Delta?
UK Met.
The National Hurricane Center.
Again.
They nailed Delta on track and intensity. The National Hurricane Center absolutely slammed Delta. They nailed it. The best performer on intensity was the H-Mon model, the Tropical, 10.3 knots off. Next was the HWRF, followed by the GFS, followed by the UK Met, followed by the NavGem, followed by the Canadian.
All righty.
All right, let me see if I have any more images on Delta. All right, no, I don't. So, all right, here's our next storm. And this is the one that really didn't get much attention this hurricane season, but Paulette. Hurricane Paulette, the eye passed right over Bermuda.
By the way, this was also the storm that wouldn't die.
Yeah, it just kept going on. And Bermuda has been, for being a little dot out in the ocean, the past 3 or 4 years have been prolific for that island. They have had eye walls, eyes. They've been nailed by everything. They've had majors. They were hit by a major I think it was last year or the year before.
Understand, they're only like 20 some odd miles across. They're small.
Yeah, how does that little island get some more activity than South Florida, for crying out loud? I don't understand it, but
I do. It's called recurvatures.
Yeah, but still, I mean, to get the eye that many times, pass directly overhead. I mean, the center of the eye, even. I'm going to show you the animation of this in just a minute. But Paulette. So here was the Hurricane Center. This was 3 days in advance. Actually, Thursday. Wait a minute. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. No, this was a 5-day cone here. This is the 5-day cone from the National Hurricane Center. They got pretty close. I mean, they said the hurricane was going to hit the island, but maybe not the eye necessarily. But they did.
I'll give them that. That's a very small target.
Very small target. So which model do you think performed best on the track of Paulette? And everybody did horribly on this, by the way.
I'll go with one of the tropical models, H-Man.
You nailed it. The HWRF was the best on track with Paulette. off by 252 miles over a 5-day period. The next best was the National Hurricane Center. They were number 2. Then came the HMON. No, the HMON was next. Then came the NHC. Then came the NAVGEM. Then the GFS. Then the Euro. Then the UK Met. Then the Canadian. All right, on intensity on Paulette, which model do you think did the best?
Model-wise, I probably would go with the UK Met, but I would say the NHC probably outperformed them.
You're right. The NHC was the best performer on the intensity of Paulette. They were only off by 11 knots. Number 2 was the H-Wharf. Number 3 was the GFS. Number 4 was the HMON. Number 5, the Canadian, then followed by the UK Met and the NAVGEM. So watch this video. This is amazing. Look at the eye passing right over that island. There's the center, and the eye passes directly over the island. Amazing. Let me zoom that in. Oh, I can't because it's an animation. Never mind.
I'm not sure an expert marksman could shoot better than... That's a very small, and I mean small target.
Amazing. All right, next image.
Next.
Okay, now we're on Zeta. This is Zeta hitting the Yucatan. And you can see that this was from October 26th at 11 p.m. It came in just south of Cozumel with 80-mile-per-hour winds. And this is one of the 4 that impacted Cancun and why it was number 1 on my list. All right, so here's the NHC forecast for Zeta. Now, not bad on the track at all. I mean, this is
track's fine.
This is 2 days out, and they nailed the track on this pretty much.
Track is good.
That track is very good. So let me ask you, what model do you think performed best on Zeta on track?
Considering I didn't look at any of these, Canadian?
Nailed it. You got it. The Canadian was off by 81.6 over a 5-day period, which was really good compared to the other models. The next best was the Euro. Then came the GFS. No, then came NHC. Then came the GFS. Then came the UK Met. Then it was the H-Wharf, the NAVGEM, and the HMON did terribly on this. Off by over 400 miles. The HMON was off by over 400 miles. That's terrible. All right, intensity. Which model do you think did the best on Zeta?
UK Met.
Nope, the best was the NHC. Believe it or not.
Zeta? What?
Now, this is surprising. It really is, because NHC predicted, and again, go full on that graphic again. They were showing this as, well, not on this graphic, but maybe I do. Maybe I have it queued up. Let me see. Nope, that's the actual landfall.
That's the herd track image.
All right, never mind that. So but the thing about it is the NHC had Zeta hitting as a borderline tropical storm hurricane. Let me go back. Now I'm confused because I thought I had that queued up. Let's go back to that cone. So let me go full on this. So they had it as a hurricane and then weakening to a tropical storm in Alabama. But the previous cone to this, I believe, or it might have been the one afterwards, not sure. They showed it, no, I think it was after it left the Yucatan. The Hurricane Center showed it as a tropical storm, weakening to a tropical storm as it came into southeast Louisiana. And that was the reason you and I decided I'm not going to go get this, because we had to make that decision while it was hitting the Yucatan or right after leaving the Yucatan, because I still had 2 days to get up there. And I decided not to go get Zeta because the Hurricane Center had it as a weakening hurricane down to tropical storm at landfall. But in this graphic, it shows it as a hurricane going into southeast Louisiana.
That's fine, but the intensity, I have a problem with it being almost 2 categories off in intensity.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between...
It almost hit as a 3.
Yeah, the difference between a weakening hurricane going in as a tropical storm and a strengthening hurricane coming in as almost a major is alarmingly... It's bad. And I'm surprised NHC didn't take a little more heat over this because, you know, luckily I don't think there were too many people got killed. I don't know if anybody got killed in Zeta. Maybe somebody did.
A few, but not many.
The damage wasn't that extreme either. So they're
But
lucky.
Can you imagine? Take Zeta. Let's put it in Miami. You said, okay, we're going to get a Category 1 in Miami, and you almost end up with a 3? They'd have been roasted for that.
Well, you don't need to say Miami. It came into New Orleans. The eye passed right over New Orleans.
Well, yeah,
but they didn't. The damage wasn't that bad for some reason. I don't know what happened there. I think, first of all, it was a lopsided. In fact, let's get to the rest of the image because I do have more images of this. So Zeta, there's the hurt track position. So it hit as 110 miles an hour, and that was at 6 p.m. and it was going to come in the dark, and that was another reason I didn't want to go get it. 6 p.m. on October 28th. So there it was, and then let me see if it. Yeah, there it is, hitting New Orleans as 105 miles an hour. So it did weaken a little bit when it came into New Orleans. That's probably maybe what saved, because a lot of those intense winds. And remember, when they're weakening, the winds don't rush down to the surface like a hurricane normally does, and blah blah blah. I was watching New Orleans. We have Zeta archived on the archive page. I was covering Zeta. I had the live webcam from New Orleans. You can see the power lines bouncing around, but nothing ever really, there wasn't any catastrophic. There was a lot of power outages, but there wasn't the catastrophic hit you would expect from a major. So,
This is the storm that had that nice cam from Grand Isle. Whoever set that up should be very proud of it.
Yep. So that's it on Zeta. Then we got to Eta, and here's a map I showed. I had this all over Twitter and everything, and this was the wind field in red, showing the expanse of those high winds. And notice the population centers, 66,000 up near Puerto Cabezas. We had 660 in the little town called Wawa that was directly impacted by Eta. And then we have Principalca down here, 16,000 population. So it split the uprights. It went to the least populated place and hit there with 140 mile per hour winds, actually around 150, and gust of 160. So here's what the NHC said for Eta. This was 2 days in advance. They pretty much nailed this track. I mean, they predicted the dip.
Wrong.
They predicted the dip to the southwest. Of course, the models were all showing that too. And they pretty much nailed it. It came in as a major hurricane, but split the uprights in the big major cities. So tell me, which model do you think performed the best for Eta?
I'm going to give I'll throw the NHC on this one. Outperformed them all.
Nope, the winner was the European model on this one.
I'll be damned, the European did win one.
Yep. The European model was off by 143 miles on an average track until it hit landfall. The models really didn't do that well on this. In fact, the UK Met was terrible. They came in last place. But NHC was number 2, followed by the HMON, followed by the GFS, followed by the NavGem, followed by the HWRF, and then the UK Met came in last place.
By
Now,
Euro standards, the Euro did not have a good year.
No, it didn't. It only, in fact, I'm going to go over the final grades on the models and show you how they rank.
Okay.
At the end of this, but the intensity on Eta, which model do you think did best on intensity? Because remember, this hit is almost a Category 5.
One of the tropical models. Let me think about it. HMON.
The National Hurricane Center.
Son of a bitch.
They won on the intensity. They were off by 7 knots.
Who was second?
The best model was the HMON. You guessed it. You've done pretty good on this, by the way. I mean, because you were kind of forgetting about NHC a few times to include them in there, but you did get the best model on a lot of these.
Yeah.
Outside of NHC.
Well, I was throwing the first few, just having a little fun with you, but then I decided that.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm buying that bullshit. Hope I cussed. Cuss jar.
Damn it!
Get the cuss jar out. Number 3 was the UK Met. No, wait a minute. UK Met did terribly. Number 3 was the GFS, followed by the Canadian, followed by the HWRF, followed by the NavGem, and the UK Met came in last. Okay, so let's get back to the images here. Now we go to Iota. This was our last impact of the. Oh, by the way, in Eta, forgot to mention it did hit Florida. I can't leave that out. It did impact. It hit. It impacted Belize, and it impacted the Cayman Islands as a tropical storm, and it hit central Cuba as a tropical storm, and it did brush the western Bahamas as a tropical storm, and it came through the Upper Keys. I was there. I was filming live as Zeta hit the Upper Keys. I don't have that video queued up because there's really not much to see. But it was a little hairy driving on that overseas highway there. The highway into the Keys was treacherous. 60-mile-an-hour gusts, some trees blown down, power outages, and then it hit Tampa as a tropical storm. Just stayed off the coast of Tampa. The right front quadrant came into Tampa, gave them gusts to 60, 70 miles an hour. A lot of coastal flooding, a lot of rain. Then it went up.
You said that's the worst rain you've ever driven through, though.
It was torrential rain. I mean, getting home was the worst. It was the worst I've ever been in for rainfall. I could not see like 5 feet in front of the truck. It was terrible in Eta. That rainfall was treacherous, and South Florida got a lot of flooding out of that, a lot of rain. A lot of areas were completely flooded. It was one of the bigger stories, believe it or not, for the United States, I think, for landfalls, other than Laura and Delta. I think I would put Eta number 3 for impacts. It really flooded a lot of areas for the United States. And it hit the Big Bend area. and went across the state and impacted Jacksonville. It impacted Georgia, Savannah, and then went out to sea. So that was it for Zeta. I mean, for Eta. Then we have Iota. Iota is up on the screen. So Iota came in from east to west. It did not do the dip to the south. Well, actually, it did a little bit. But here's what the National Hurricane Center was showing before. This was Saturday, Sunday, Monday. This was about three and a half days out.
Keep in mind, the initial landfall point for both of these systems, one was 15 miles to the north, the other one was 15 miles to the south. I mean,
absolutely.
To say they overlapped is an understatement.
Yeah, they both hit almost the same exact place.
I mean, you don't see that too often. You do. I mean, I can think of a U.S. example, not for intensity. This is just for location. Gene and Francis come to mind. 2004.
Right.
Not for intensity. Just
no, that's an excellent analogy.
Same area within like what, a month? I think it's like
Yeah, one was a Cat 2, one was borderline Cat 3, but yeah, the track was almost identical. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, you're absolutely. That's an excellent analogy. I couldn't even think of anything that was comparable to this. I'm glad, and it's my own state. I should know better than that.
Stop it. I had a brain fart earlier. You're entitled to one. You're fine.
Yeah, that's a good score for you there. I forgot about that. That's an excellent comparison. All right, so
I'm not comparing intensity. That was strictly for track purposes only.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no comparison.
You're dealing with two borderline Cat 5s, or one borderline Cat 5 and the other one was a Cat 5 down in Nicaragua.
Right.
I mean, totally different animal. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. And I think Gene and Francis were bigger in size than this one.
You have that. I mean, that thing hit up towards Stewart and Vero Beach, but you had the Southern Eyewall sitting there in Delray. That's how huge that one of those storms were.
Yeah, both of them kicked my ass too. Francis was a slow mover, 24 hours. My power was out for like 10 days. And Gene, believe it or not, even though it was stronger, and I got the eyewall of Gene, power was only out for a few days. So, I mean, big difference. There's something to be said about duration of a storm, too. And that's why probably Sally was so bad, because it just lingered. It took forever to get through that area when it hit Alabama.
I mean, I'll let you in on one final thing on Sally. The last thing I told my aunt before it got really bad is I said, be prepared for 6 hours of hell. And that's exactly what I wrote.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to keep her informed and alert her to what was happening. Too bad she probably wasn't listening to you. She was kind of thinking of blowing it off. And,
Well, next time she's going to leave for the littlest thing. When I tell you this scared the hell out of her, she ain't doing this again.
Well, you live in the hurricane zone. You got to deal with them. You got to be able to do battle with them.
You got to. I mean, it's the old analogy. You've heard me use this analogy all the time. Or maybe it's not an analogy. Basically, you rent coastal property. You don't own it. The hurricane's going to come do what it does occasionally. Eventually, your number will be called.
That's right. Yeah, and the graphic I have up is proof of that. Nicaragua hardly ever gets hit by not just hurricanes; they hardly ever get hit by tropical storms.
What is there? You told me this over the phone, and I go back. I think I went back and looked it up. I think it's like once every 74 years.
Yeah, they get a major there about once every 74 years.
Can you go quote that, or do you have it?
Yeah, I don't want to pull it up because I'm going to lose my images if I do that.
Hang on, I'll go look it up. I'll see if I can find it.
I believe it's once. I think I know the stats. It's once every like 14 years for a named storm. It's like once every 27 years for a hurricane, and it's like once every 70 years or something, 70 plus years for a major.
Yeah, I mean, it's some absurd number for the major. That's where I come up with the, because my jaw hit the floor when you told me that.
Yeah, it's the least impacted area in the entire Atlantic Basin.
It's amazing.
Central Nicaragua. Yeah. All right. So, so here's Iota. Here was the NHC track. Pretty good. They nailed the track. Called it a major. There's no surprises. Nobody was caught off guard or anything. Nobody can blame NHC and say we didn't know it was coming and all this. They knew both of these, Eta and Iota, were going to hit, and to prepare for it, severe impacts.
And I'll go ahead and say the NHC outperformed the model on this one. All
right. You're wrong. The European finally got one on this. The European was the best on track for Iota. Off by 25 miles for the duration. Next in line was the UK Met. Number 2. Number 3 was NHC. Number 4 was the GFS. Number 5 was the Canadian. Number 6, HMON. Number 7, the H-Wharf. And number 8, the NavGem. Now, on intensity, which model do you think performed the best on Iota?
Iota, I'll say for models, I'll say the NHC as a whole. But if I have to give a model, I would probably say the HMON again.
You're right. National Hurricane Center was number 1 on the intensity. They nailed the intensity on Iota. Number 2 was you're not going to believe this, the NavGem came in number 2 on intensity on Iota.
What the hell? That model's usually garbage.
Yeah. Number 3 was the UK Met. Number 4 was the Icon. The Icon really hardly ever gets used for grading intensity, but it did pretty well. Followed by the Canadian, followed by the GFS, then the HMON, then the H-Wharf did the worst on Iota. All right, so let me see if I have any more images on this. No, that's it. And a reminder that we'll get to this later, but let's get rid of this. All right, so based on all the models, the entire year. So what I did was, and let me do a little bit of, just explain briefly to the audience how I arrive at these numbers, okay?
And it's only 9:30. We're doing really good.
Good. So we got the Best Track program that downloads all the data and keeps track of each storm throughout the year. So on the intensity is a little more problematic to calculate because, for example, the Canadian has 3 ensemble models that it's used for intensity, grading the intensity, and the GFS has like 4 or 5 for intensity. The UK Met has a few for intensity, and on and on. In other words, most of these models have like 3 models that grade intensity. So what I do is add up all 3 models, and then I divide it by 3, and that gives me my average for each main model. Like the GFS has like 4 models. I divide it by 4, and that gives me my average for intensity. On track, they're pretty straightforward. Each one only uses 1 model run on that. Now, so what I did for fun here is I decided to take every landfalling hurricane and add up all the errors on track. So what I do is, like, for example, the GFS on Hannah had 115 miles off. The GFS on Isaias was 327 miles off. The GFS on Laura was 116 miles off. You get it. So on and on and on. So what I do is take all those numbers and add them all up and then come up with a final number. So here's what it came out to. The model that got the most, the least amount of numbers, which would be the most accurate, would be the European model. of all the models, the European model did the best on track overall. Could you believe that? Even though it didn't win the individual landfalls on each storm, if you add up the overall error rate as it was traveling towards its destination, the European model did the best on all of these landfall.
That shows you how good that model is, even though we think it had a bad year.
Yeah. It was off by 1,977 miles, taking all these storms into consideration. The next best, actually, that's based on models, but you know who did the best on overall was the National Hurricane Center. They were off by 1,704 miles on all these storms. So the National Hurricane Center was number one. The UK Met number two. This also factors in intensity, by the way. This also factors in intensity, not just track, but intensity and track, adding everything up.
Mm-hmm.
So NHC number one, compared to all the models, the NHC beat them all this year. The best on intensity and track overall through all the models was the Euro. The next was the GFS, off by 1,808 miles. Next in line was the HWRF, followed by the Canadian, followed by the HMON, followed by the UK Met, then finally the HMON. The HMON was the worst of all the models on track and intensity combined. So that's it.
I got some work to do with the HMON.
The HMON had a terrible year. The European had a great year on intensity and track, and the National Hurricane Center absolutely hit it out of the park.
Let's see. I'm just trying to think. Have I hit all my talking points? I think.
Yeah. I know you had some good ones for me. Didn't you say something about, you were talking about Alabama or...
Just give me the gist of it and I'll remember it.
My short-term memory is god-awful. It's terrible.
Well, it's 9:30 at night. As active as this year was, the accumulated cyclone energy, the ACE, that all the professionals, they fawn over this. ACE. This year was 13th. Why?
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. Okay.
I'll go into that. There's reasons for ACE takes in not only the intensity, but the duration of the storm, how strong it was, takes in everything. How long it was around, all of that.
Right.
And that storms are scored individually. So it was 13th. The top two are 1933, number one, and 2005
really?
Is number two. You asked me
wow.
to look that up, so I did earlier.
Wow. Okay. Well, I kind of figured 2005 was up there, but because of all the Cat 5s and everything.
2005 is two.
Wow. So 1933, there must have been a lot of Cat 5s roaming or majors roaming around.
Yeah,
wow.
I was surprised by that. It was 33. Now, as far as named storms, and by the way, I don't think we're done with named storms for this year, even though the calendar technically, the way I'll put this is regulation ends today. Doesn't mean we can't go into overtime.
Right.
And
by the way, I have a page on
storms in the North Atlantic. There could be one or even two more. Wouldn't shock me.
And by the way, I have a page at Hurricane City designed specifically for that. use the drop-down menus, off-season storms, and it goes from December, January, February, March, shows graphically what storms were out there and where they occurred. So it's a pretty neat page to check out.
I forget what year this was, but it was recent, within the last couple of years. We had a hurricane in January a couple of years ago. It can happen.
Yeah, yeah. Every month has had something.
Yeah.
Even February.
Yeah, it's nuts. But you got any?
Wasn't there something else though? Wasn't there something else you had to point out to me that you? Oh, we were talking about the deaths, right? So the death toll from Iota and Eta was not as high as we were expecting because Mitch killed like.
We're talking about the whole Mitch thing.
Yeah, Hurricane Mitch, which hit Honduras in 1998, killed like almost 20,000 people. It was terrible. Like the rain never stopped for days and days and days, and all the mudslides and the death was horrific. I remember there was a mass exodus into the United States from these countries because it was so wiped out down there. But this Iota and Eta only killed like less than 200 people down there. I was really surprised that the death toll wasn't higher.
Now, I think our technology's gotten a lot better with social media and messaging.
Right.
There's no excuse for not. I mean, now you could say the same thing in the 90s, but things have gotten a lot faster with the invention of the internet, text messaging, and so on. There's no excuse for not knowing. You have to live under a rock now.
Yeah, but here's the thing: there is a challenge to that comment though, because you got to realize it's a poor country. Not everybody's connected. Number one. Number two,
it's third world down there.
Yeah, and number two, even if you knew, you're living inland. You're not expecting a mudslide. Perhaps those are things that are kind of surprising. Like you don't expect your particular hill to collapse. That's just something. I mean, you'd have to evacuate almost the whole country. It's full of mountains. Like you can't possibly evacuate everybody. So people are going to stay and they're going to die, even though they know there's a risk. It's random when it comes to mudslides.
I mean, we talk about this all the time. The only comparable example would be Haiti because of all the deforestation.
Right. They don't have anywhere to go either, man. A lot of these people live on mountains, so
yeah.
What are you going to do? But here's the thing. The reason Mitch killed so many people, it's twofold. Mitch was gigantic. Mitch was like 3 times the size of Iota and Eta. Like it was size-wise, it was gigantic. And it was much slower over land. Mitch went down there. In fact, Mitch was a Category 5 over the Bay Islands of Honduras, right? And then by the time it got on land in Honduras, it was down to a Category 1. Then it went south, and it lingered for like 3 days or something. I counted it on the herd track.
It was absurd.
Like 3 days it lingered down there as a tropical storm or a hurricane. And then finally to a depression.
The bigger storms, even though they move inland, their circulation is so huge. With storms like that, Katrina comes to mind. Ike comes to mind. Mitch.
Right.
Gilbert. Those type of storms. They can still, even though the center's inland, they're envelope and they take up so much of the atmosphere, they can still draw a little bit from the water. So the spigot never shuts off until it totally gets way inland or dies.
Yeah, it's like squeezing a sponge out, and it's just, it goes on and on and on. So
rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. That's what happens with those bigger storms.
Yeah. And, could have happened with Sally if it was a whole hurricane, but
oh my God! I mean,
Sally was half a
faster than that son of a bitch.
And plus, when you have flat land, it's not as tragic. You don't have mudslides and things like that. So that was the only good news that came out of Eta and Iota is that we didn't have the massive death toll. Nothing like COVID or anything. In fact, you and I were doing the math on that. Like as many people that died in Hurricane Mitch 20,000 people, it's still a fraction of the people that have died of COVID in the United States. Like, it's like 1/5 or not even a fifth. Like, no, it's 20, 40, 68. It's, 15%. So it's not even, it's a fraction of what the people that have died in the United States from COVID.
Yeah.
So
I'll be right back.
Anyway,
A little bit of a PSA before we get off the air.
Yeah, I was just going to go into that. The whole evacuation COVID thing never really turned out to be a big deal as far as we know. We don't know how many people may have caught COVID in evacuation shelters, but I suspect a lot of people didn't evacuate this year because of COVID. I just don't think it was an issue. But
like I said, I'm going to do a PSA real quick.
Anyways, it is currently
it's not for historical purposes, but for the people that are watching this over the next 6 months.
Okay, I think he's bringing a prop out or something. Are we going to get a big, like a ball of COVID or something?
Now, hold on.
A beach ball that's shaped like COVID? Mask?
Wear a mask, people. It saves a life.
No, that's not the proper way. You got. Oh, there you go.
I think I put it on backwards.
No, you got it. Yeah, cover the eyes and everything.
Oh, I'm tired as hell. Here we go.
That's a good thing to have. One of those ones that just pull right over your head. You pull it around your neck. That's a great thing to have.
This is the copper fit one. The Guardwell. I've got like 4 of these. 2 of these I haven't even used in the closet.
And you just wash them and you like rotate them.
This is the one. This is the one I'll wear tomorrow if I go out. I rotate them every 24 hours. So you can't see it, but I got the other one hanging over there on the rack on the stove drying out. Mm-hmm. that I'll use on Wednesday if I have to use this one tomorrow, and then I'll dry this. This one will go back over there, and I just rotate them out.
Yeah, good idea.
And then I don't like wearing it in the house. I'll get rid of it. And then I'm going to try not to use the other 2 in the closet. Because I'm not saying we're going to get another one of these, but the way we're going with this stuff, don't get rid of this stuff even when this is over with. Because I think we're going to have to deal with this again at a smaller scale, but just don't forget about it.
Right.
But this is, wear a mask, people. You can save your life.
Yeah, listen.
It's not hard.
It's out of control. It's going to get really bad here in the next few weeks, going in past Christmas and New Year's and everything. Let's just stop with the crap already. It's worth saving one life. It's worth it. Why do you want to, especially as a young person, think, okay, well, I'm not going to get that sick, so I don't really give a damn, and you're just going to give it to an elderly person or somebody that's got a pre-existing condition. You're going to kill them. And it's happening far too many nurses are dying. Too many teachers are dying. Too many first responders, people with pre-existing conditions. Just because you have asthma or you're overweight doesn't mean you deserve to die. And it's all of our responsibilities to just do the right thing and wear a mask when you're expecting to be around a crowd or you're inside of a building where you think you could be floating around or something. Just put a mask on. It's not a big deal. I mean, I don't wear when I'm out and about doing activities. I don't generally wear it unless I know I'm going to be around people, and I put it back on again. It's as simple as that.
That's the beauty of having. I keep doing this to do a demonstration. It's easy. Throw it on, throw it off. And if I'm by myself and I'm outside, I leave it around my neck because I don't like it on. I don't like it on my face.
Yeah,
that's all you got to do.
And you can use it for eating, drinking, then just pull it right up real quick. It's no looping around the ears and all that crap. It's really easy to do. So yeah, that's definitely
the looping around the ears. I was anti-mask until I got this because it was cutting my ears. the ear loops were just cutting my ears, and it hurt.
Wow.
And I just
So maybe that's how I could torture.
And I got online and found these.
Maybe that's how I could torture you. I could bring a little salt water with me, and you get those little cuts behind your ear, and dip a little bit of that in there. Make you squirm a little bit.
You're an asshole.
Little payback there.
Yeah, little payback for all those times.
A little salt water behind the ears never hurt anybody. All right, so let's wrap it up. So final notes. Horrific hurricane season could have been a lot worse. I mean, as many storms as we got, it wasn't a high death toll. Everybody got through it okay. Hopefully they had their insurance. They were able to get everything fixed, and a lot of people have learned lessons. So next year, you know what to expect. It may be slow. It may be busy. We don't know yet. And anybody that's going to tell you it's going to be busy next year just is blowing smoke because they don't know.
But even if it's not, remember,
takes one. Only takes one.
And the South Florida resident knows this. 1992 was a dead year for hurricanes, and what happened?
That's right.
It only takes one.
Yep. In fact, if we have a slow season, I fully expect somebody's going to get hit really, really bad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, season. I would expect. I'm confident in saying this. We're going to stay within the 21 name list. We will not go into the Greek alphabet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. But although, well, it's possible. But I don't think so either. Remember after 2005, just to let people know, 2005, everybody thought, and I was one of them, oh my God, the lid is off. We're going to start getting we're going to be having 20, 30 storms a year. We ended up with, was it 13 named storms the following year or something?
That's kind of what I'm expecting. Again, somewhere in the range of 15 to 20.
But there were no hurricanes that hit the U.S. after 2005.
But remember this. It could also go the other way. 2004 and 2005 were both bad.
Right.
This could go the other way of we have 2 bad years and then a quiet year.
Well, we haven't had just 2 bad years. We've had 5 in a row.
2022.
Yeah. No Cat 5s.
We're just blowing smoke now. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, no Cat 5s hit this year. That was good news. But we've had Cat 5s every year for the last 6 years or something.
Cat 5s every year for the last 5 years.
Well, let's see. We had Matthew. We had 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so, 15, Joaquin. No, that wasn't a Cat 5.
That was 4.
Yeah, Joaquin's the one that sunk the ship in the Bahamas. That was close though. It got up to like 150 or 145 or something. All right.
Yeah, that's a storm that wouldn't leave. It was almost a Dorian copy for another chain of the Bahamian Islands because it just sat there for a day and a half.
Yeah, and headed southwest, which is a very unusual track. All right, let's wrap it up. We've been 2.5 hours. So, and I want to thank again the people that do donate to Hurricane City. Believe me, your donations are 100% used for this operation. They're much appreciated. If it wasn't for those donations, I don't know what we would do. But we got to get more in here. We spread the word. People, look at it this way. Look at what we're doing tonight. Bill and I were interacting with each other. We're trying to make it somewhat of an interesting experience. I've watched some of these other chasers out there. They're on the phone. They're not paying attention to the audience. They're distracted. They're calling the media. They're doing all these other things. They don't care about the audience. They just care about either loading their pockets up or they're distracted with some other thing. Bill and I, we just care about you guys. That's the only reason this is being done. The people that are watching and the people that donate. And that we need more donations. We need more eyeballs on what we're doing. And spread the word on social media, too, whenever we're live. We really appreciate it. Bobby does that. Bobby Storm, Love her. She's always talking about what we're doing with the live shows. Whenever we're live, she's blasting it all over social media. Appreciate that. You know, just spread the word around. That's all.
Yep, spread the word. We need the donations. We want to make this better. We know that we've not done the best job we can do, but we need help to give us the tools to make this even better than it already has been. So
yeah, this year's been the best.
Spread the word, and we'll see you on June 1st of next year.
All right. So in the meantime, check us out at Hurricane City on Twitter, Facebook. I got my personal timeline, Hurricane City Tracking. Follow us. Pay attention to the off season. We may do some snowstorm cover, some nor'easters. Bill has his own camera now that he can set up, so we might occasionally bust in with some live coverage from time to time. It's not completely done, even though it's outside of hurricane season. I'll be number crunching for the most part. I'll leave it up to Bill if he wants to cover something off season, but I'm going to be gearing up for 2021 hurricane season. That's it. Thank you again, and we'll see you back. Pay attention to the news feed. By the way, if you donate, you get on the mailing list. And if we're going to go live, we send that to the mailing list. So
mailing list gets all kinds of special stuff before we release it to the public.
Yeah, it's usually get notified first of everything. So we do appreciate that. All right, Bill, thanks again for your help again this year, and stay safe with COVID, and we'll talk.
All right, keep in the broadcast, but stay here for a minute.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Yep.